Elite design, better comfort, more grip. Our new Pure Grip Socks Elite add engineered compression, an anti-blister base, and more grip to keep you locked in. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
I think it's always tough to say that any football boots from the big three brands are underrated, but I'm hoping that great special edition colorways like this bring more attention to this football boot, because I would love to see them continue on the path of what these have on offer, where I think they're quite easily a top 3 most comfortable boot on the market right now. Whereas we've seen with a lot of limited drops from Adidas lately, this does come in their new limited collection box, which is really heavy duty, comes with a box lid. Of course, they do include a string bag, which as you can see is white and blue in color with the Copa Pure 3 branding in black in the middle on one side, and then the large Copa font in blue on the back side. It gets a string bag rating of 11 out of 15.04. And then of course there's the boots themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the absolutely stunning limited collection Adidas Copa 11 Pure, which is basically just a tribute colorway of the Pure 3 Elite. Retails for the same $250 as a normal colorway, but of course features colors and graphics that match the Champions League 2014 11 Pro 3, where of course this iconic white, blue, and black colorway was made famous by Toni Kroos and is very closely associated with him. However, this particular generation of 11 Pro wasn't really a version that he wore beyond maybe a couple training sessions, which is kind of crazy because I think most people see these boots and still associate it to Toni Kroos. We're going to take a closer look at some of the details of what I think is one of the best looking new colorways of 2025. We're even going to compare them to an original pair and ultimately discuss why I think the Copa Pure 3 Elite is one of the most underrated new boots currently on the market, and why you might want to consider a pair, especially if you've been a long-time Nike Tiempo Legend wearer. Where if you're interested in learning more, including how they fit and feel on feet, please stick around. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick up the normal colorways below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes via the first link down below. But you can also scoop up what's left of this limited edition release. Not all sizes are currently available, unfortunately, but get them before they're gone, again, via that link down below. And as always, if you guys appreciate the unsponsored, brutally honest, unsugar-coated reviews on this channel, don't forget to drop a like on the video and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already so you don't miss out on my reviews of all the latest football boots of 2025. So first things first, here's a look at the tribute pair side by side with the OG from 2014, where the 11 Pro 3 would ultimately end up being the final 11 Pro model. And for a football boot that is now 10 years old, I actually think it's aged extremely well. Where the 11 Pro 3 was kind of its own standalone product, if we're being honest with ourselves, and that it doesn't have too much in common with the first two 11 Pro models, with the first big change being Adidas switching back to kangaroo leather for the upper of this football boot, rather than pushing their calfskin Taurus leather upper, as they called it, which I don't think was a change that a lot of people were super happy about. The leather itself, very soft, but definitely on the thinner side. And of course, unlike the 11 Pro 2, which featured that very traditional quilted stitching pattern in the leather through the forefoot, this instead featured an internal skeletal support cage that kind of has that same quilted pattern to it. This eliminated the need for stitching on the surface of the upper. All the reinforcement was in the liner itself, and it also featured this very unique kind of racing stripe design flowing across the top of the boot, which kind of looks like a graphic from a distance, but when you look closely, it's actually a singular strip of material where this side and this side of the upper are actually stitched to this kind of central stripe. It was kind of a sneaky way for them to actually add structure by way of stitching in the forefoot, and I'm not so sure that it was ultimately the best way to do things, but in terms of fit, feel, and overall performance, if you wanted a modern take on a classic leather football boot, I'd argue that this was the best 11 Pro. Having said that, I can't say that I like the OG pair as much as I like the new Copa Pure 3 Elite, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that disagree with me on this, I actually like the Tribute colorway more than I like the original. Where, don't get me wrong, this is super clean. There's nothing about it that looks dated or ugly in any way at all. To me, it's one of the better looking Adidas football boots of all time if you really appreciate simplicity. But I think on this new pair, the stripe's a little bit thinner. I like the difference in material and texture that you can see as it flows from leather to synthetic into prime knit. That to me is such a cool detail. I like the little bit of a blue accent that you have within the Adidas stripes. The 11 Pure logo is pretty cool. You still get the stripe up the back, and I like the little blue detailing within the sole plate tooling with, of course, the center stripe running down the middle, which again just maybe has a little bit more of a modern, clean aesthetic to it. Where even though you couldn't tell from the outside, this was part of a Champions League colorway pack, hence the Champions League logo on the insole, where they kind of stayed true to the original with no visible Champions League branding on the outside, but simply the Champions League ball on the heel. As far as the fit, feel, and performance side of things go, the Copa Pure 3 Elite can be best described as everything that most modern football boots aren't. While disappointingly, the upper is no longer kangaroo leather like it once was on the modern Copa series, the calfskin leather that they've gone for is soft, and I think most importantly, still padded enough to give you that soft cushion touch on the ball. So many football boots these days, even the leather ones, are so thin that they don't really provide that same cushion that leather football boots used to have. And I think when people hear the word cushion, they automatically associate that with bulk and heaviness and just material that you don't need. But these by no stretch of the imagination feel bulky on feet or cumbersome on the ball. They're just soft and, dare I say, no pun intended because of the name of course, they just feel pure. Where again, I think there's going to be a lot of people that would complain about the fact that this fusion skin upper only gives you that calfskin leather in the forefoot and toe box area, and then it flows into a synthetic through the midfoot. But even the synthetic materials that they've used just match up really nicely from a softness and thickness standpoint to that leather in the forefoot, where the touch on the ball in general just feels very consistent no matter what part of your foot makes contact with the ball. It still has the modern aspect of this kind of elasticated prime knit one-piece enclosure while still maintaining a little bit more of a traditional design, and that you can see it does have a more traditional U-throat construction. The tongue itself is fixed on the underside of all the lacing positions, but it still utilizes a single lace hole setup with that central lacing system, allowing for great adjustability when you tie the laces tight, and even giving you that extra anchor point a little bit further back and down from the top lace hole should you need some extra lockdown in the heel. And then from a grip on the ball standpoint, again, the trend as of late is to provide more grip rather than less. This, unlike what the Predators or the F50s have on offer, has a little bit more of a smooth finish on the surface. They talk about this 3D texturing offering some level of haptic feedback. You have it within the Adidas stripes and very minor micro texturing on the surface of the leather, but in all reality, there is no extra grip on the ball to be had here. That's not to say that they are slippery, of course, but in general, just very smooth and kind of like what a traditional leather football boot should feel like, in my opinion. Moving towards the rear, they've kept things very simple and traditional, where you have a standard low-cut design. The heel area itself is very soft and doesn't have a ton of structure to it, which makes for great overall comfort. Most of your structure is going to come from what is basically like a mini heel counter highlighted in blue on this particular colorway. And then the heel liner, I think, is top-notch. It's this really soft microfiber liner. You have some targeted padding, but in general, it's positioned in exactly the right spot to grab your heel very comfortably, but still feel super secure with the laces tied tight. One of the better heel liners on the market, in my opinion. And then the insole, fully removable. I'll give you guys a quick look at that. Again, it has that special Champions League ball graphic for this particular colorway, but otherwise, it's a very standard smooth mesh liner on the surface, and it's made from a super soft ortholite foam material, where you have a more spongy blue foam that's a little bit thicker for the main body of the insole, and then a slightly more dense firmer red foam insert through the heel as well as the forefoot. Again, nothing special in terms of underfoot feel, but an above average quality insole for what we see from most football boots. And then when it comes to the base, it's the best sole plate stud pattern tooling that we've had on the modern Copa series in quite some time. It's what they're calling the comfort frame, that at the end of the day doesn't really differ that much from the sprint frame constructions that we've seen from Adidas over the last 15 years or so, in that the sole plate itself is more on the flexible side, but still has a little bit of that responsive feel to it. I wouldn't say that it's so soft that it's completely mushy underfoot, but it definitely has more flexibility than what you'd find from, say, an F50 or even a Predator. And then as far as the FG stud pattern is concerned, different from most of their FG stud patterns in the sense that you have 4 studs along the outside of the forefoot rather than just 3, mostly conical in shape. Some blades at the base of the forefoot, 1 bladed stud kind of supporting the middle, but in general it's very traditional in terms of feel, but still gives you that bite and freedom to twist and pivot because of the rounded shaping to the studs. Where on firm natural grass, the traction is great and very well suited to this style of upper. And then there's the weight, where I thought it'd be fun to compare the new pair to the OGs from 2014, keeping in mind though that this 11 Pro 3 is actually a size 9, whereas this new pair is a 9.5. So the old pair is at a bit of an advantage being half a size smaller. We'll start off with the OGs, and you can see that they weigh in at 8.95 ounces, the equivalent of 254 grams, which is not exceptionally heavy, but right around the 9 ounce mark is not exactly light for 2025 standards. Then we'll throw on the Copa Pure 3 Elite, and you can see that they weigh in at 7.75 ounces, the equivalent of 220 grams. Meaning that the Pure 3 Elite is over 30 grams lighter than its equivalent from 11 years ago. Pretty crazy considering that technically they're really not that different. It just goes to show that materials have definitely gotten a lot lighter over the last 10 years or so. Not that Adidas couldn't have made these lighter at the time, but I just think what people expect from a pair of top-end football boots from a weight perspective has just changed a lot. When it comes to the fit and feel on feet, as much as most modern football boots are quite comfortable out of the box, I think with all the knits and synthetics that we've had over the last 10 years and so much design variation, we've lost sight a little bit of what maybe not true comfort feels like, but how comfortable a pair of football boots can actually be. Where again, even though this upper isn't entirely made out of soft leather, the Fusion skin does a really nice job of flowing that soft calf skin in the forefoot into what is still a very soft synthetic material through the midfoot, with a great heel design and a nice deep central lacing system. The end result is that the Copa Pure 3 Elite is truly and honestly one of the most comfortable football boots currently on the market. They're soft, they're flexible, the shaping, the width, the volume. I think Adidas just got everything right with the way that these boots fit and feel. And of course, being that they are leather in the forefoot and toe box area, as you wear them in, they're only going to soften up more and form to the exact shape of your feet, making them feel that much more comfortable. Again, the more flexible feel to the sole plate, I think really suits this style of upper. And if comfort is something that you typically struggle with, this is definitely one of those football boots that you would want to consider. From a width perspective, these have plenty of width pretty much all the way through. They're tapered a little bit as you get into the midfoot area, but in general, this is one of those football boots that I could see working for just about anybody, even if you do have wider feet. Of course, give them some time to stretch if your feet are exceptionally wide, and I think you'll end up with a really comfortable fit and feel. And then as far as sizing is concerned, they do run a smidge longer than the Preds or the F50s, maybe a quarter size. I'd actually argue a little bit less than that. I'm still wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and I really don't feel the need to go down in size at all. So with a lot of boots that run just a little bit long, I make pretty much the same recommendation. If you're already wearing your boots quite snug and you're happy with the way that they fit in terms of length, I'd probably stay true to size for the Copa Pure 3 Elite. Whereas if you're wearing your boots right now and you find that they're a little bit long, going half a size down in these might not be a bad idea in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, as much as I would love the Copa Pure 3 Elite to have that full kangaroo leather upper, especially for the $250 retail price, for what it is and how it feels, it's everything that you could possibly want from a modern interpretation of a classic leather football boot. While there are things on paper that I do like more about the Tiempo Legend 9 Elite from Nike, if we're just talking about the way that these fit and feel, the Copa Pure 3 Elite feels like a continuation of what that boot had on offer. And considering the direction that Nike is taking the Tiempo line, a football boot like this existing in 2025 is something that I think we as consumers need to cheer on to make it continue to be a thing. Because as much as we can look back on the Kangaroo Leather 11 Pro 3 from 2014 and say to ourselves, these are so amazing, why doesn't Adidas just make it again? This is also a football boot that got discontinued because the support from a sales perspective just wasn't there. I'm not saying that the Copa Pure 3 Elite should be an automatic buy if you're after a pair of leather football boots, because Adidas's own Copa Icon 2 at a lower price tag of $180 is also pretty fantastic. But those trend a little bit more in the speed boot direction. These maybe have a slightly more traditional tilt to the way that they feel. So if that's your type of thing, this is definitely one of those boots that I would very strongly consider.